Are you ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Culture, Climate, and Behavior Subcommittee of the District 200 School Board. And I call the meeting to order at 6:40 p.m. and ask for the roll. Lisa? Ms. Evans? Dr. Applewhite? Here. Dr. Chandler?
Here.
Mr. Coghlan?
Present.
Mr. Davis? Mr. Gates?
Here.
Mr. Dominguez? Ms. Grimes?
Here.
Ms. Harris? Here. Mr. Henry?
Here.
Ms. Janney? Ms. Jones McLeod?
Here.
Ms. McGee?
Here.
Ms. McQueen?
Here.
Ms. Dr. Morrison? Ms. Parker?
Here.
Ms. Takayama?
Here.
Ms. Scriber?
Here.
Ms. Shotwell? Ms. Starkstern?
Here.
Ms. Stevens? Ms. Reynolds Monroe? And Ms. Williams?
Yeah.
Thank you. I would ask if there is a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Oh, and we have another person that just got there.
Yes, well,
Miss Stevens.
so sorry, Susan Stevens. I'm
No,
looking for,
please.
Yeah, you definitely just see over here.
I just was wondering how on earth.
This is a good problem to have.
Right? It is a very good problem to have. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. Anyone object to the approval of the minutes? Hearing none, please approve the minutes. Do we have any public comments? No public comments for tonight. Thank you. So welcome. I see faces that I'm so excited to see here. And I want us to just do a round of like who you are before we get started. The agenda is going to be flipped tonight. So originally we were going to do the circle first, but Linda and Dr. Parker and team have a report to give to us and some information to share. And I thought it would be best if we get that information, have some of the discussion, and then move into circle as we wind up tonight. So if we could start on that end with introductions, and we'll just go all the way around.
My name is Edward. I'm with the IT help desk.
Lisa Evans, Executive Assistant to the Superintendent and Clerk of the Board.
Good evening, Charlene Jones McLeod, Director of Campus. Good evening, Carla Williams, Dean of Students.
Linda Parker, Assistant Superintendent Principal, still rejecting the document.
I'm giving it to you.
I can't help it. Gina Harris, D200 School Board member.
Hi, everyone. I'm Commissioner Starks, I'm the Associate Superintendent of the 97, and I have student with the city.
Laura Stuckey, I'm on a community member.
Raquel McGee, English teacher.
Curtis Diggs, trauma-informed school interventionist.
Susan Stevens, community member of the Fire Social Worker. Sonia Ackway, Director of Students.
We're going to D200 school board member or board secretary.
Lincoln Chandler, I do data work.
Karen Grimes, community member.
Sarah Schreiber, it's my first meeting, so I'm happy to be here. I have two kids at OPRS, one is a freshman, one is a junior, and so I'm the same with financial aid.
Kaylee Biasinger, this is also my first meeting, and I'm a mathematics teacher.
Jeffrey Codwell, history teacher, club sponsor, coach.
Melanie McQueen, parent and co-president of Apple.
Thank you, and welcome to all the new people. Thank you. I'm so glad that we're all here tonight. And fabulous on the screen. Thank you.
Janelle Bishop, current Director of Employee Relations and Recruitment, formerly Dean of Students.
Yay. Glad you could be with us, Janelle.
Thanks for having me.
Everyone. So I'm just gonna turn it right on over and see if we get started.
Sounds good.
Nice
Thank you
partner.
so much. So, good evening, everyone. I'm very excited to bring this information to the team this evening, more so about the discussion that we want to have ensue after we show the slides and the information. Because Janelle is here tonight to assist me in presenting this information. There may be times as well that Ms. Williams, who's also a dean and has participated in the compiling of this data, may also chime in. But we are here to present the student conduct report and speak about our behavior and discipline practices from the last school year. So this is 2021-22, and in looking into the year that we're currently in, as well as we go forward, just trying to make sure that we are being as proactive as possible in our troubleshooting for our concerns that come in the building. So focus on either screen, because you'll be able to follow along in terms of the presentation. So in terms of just our focus, everyone recalls that last year was the implementary year of the BEP without a pandemic. So it was the first time that we were on campus using our new model. But as everyone in the country recognized, last year was a very special year in terms of school. It was very different than any school year that anyone who's been an educator has experienced, as well as students. So our students had quite a transition back after a year and a half of kind of isolation from social engagement as we knew it. And so we saw different things within our building as we were trying to transition back, and caused us to be a lot more creative in terms of how we address situations with our students and the behaviors that we saw coming forth. Our deans were are always charged with carrying out our BEP. But they were very focused on making sure that not only were we looking at the incidents that were occurring, but also trying to better understand what we were seeing, and also help students to understand like what was happening for them as well. So it was more so not just a need to punish things as they were happening, but help them to explain those things as they were experiencing them too, but understanding more about like harm that was being caused as a result of some of the behaviors that we were seeing. And then PSS teams, which is our counselors, our social workers, along with our deans, were actually working to help integrate the restorative practices into different interactions within the building, inclusive of our classroom interactions, because our teachers took a very big part in what they were doing in their classrooms to have students better understand how we need them to show up in those spaces. We are always understanding that this is an ongoing mind shift for individuals. We are like to think about the restorative work that we do in conjunction with any of the consequencing that we have to do as well with it. So it's not a either or, it's a both and it's done with compassion in helping to understand for the student, like, where am I going wrong? How do I correct that? But knowing that these things do have consequences that are associated with it. And you'll hear a little bit more about that as we go through in terms of the what happened to make that occur. If you all remember in this team, last year, we came to you mid-year and we had a discussion about how our BEP was not necessarily aligning in terms of our infractions with what we were seeing manifesting in the school. And we needed to do some shifting as a result so that we were properly doing consequences with students. This board here said that that was good to do. We made those changes midstream, and that has worked very well at that point and going forward for us as well. And those adjustments, we're seeing some positive impact in our data as a result of what has happened. So just so that everyone knows, as we do this work within the school, we do have a guiding question. And it's this one that you see here. We're in an effort to create a more supportive learning environment, which is part of our strategic plan for the district. How have the focus on nurturing relationships throughout the school, building our culture of warmth, increased use of restorative practices and less punitive responses had an impact on our student behavior? So these things that you see us speaking about here, these are things we have put in place with students to try and see what the effects would be on their interactions with their peers and with the adults in this building. And so that is what we focused on as we were putting this work together. And so
Right now, what the BEP stands
Oh,
for.
I'm sorry,
Because they're
behavior,
moving forward.
absolutely, I'm so sorry, I'm using acronyms. The BEP is the Behavior Education Plan, and it replaced our code of conduct. And I've been so careful not to repeat, I know everyone's like, oh, we know this part. But for the new people, the code of conduct was our old structure in terms of how we used to do consequences in our building, and it focused more on levels of consequences. The BEP focuses more on the response to infractions versus like, are you a level 1, which gets you this many days, a level 2 that gets you this many days, and a level 3. All of them result in days. That's it, right? That was our code of conduct. The BEP is more so, what is our opportunity to teach and to have learning occur in this space and build skills for students as we restructure their thought process in terms of the things that they were doing. So that's the major difference of the two. Thank you so much. So we're gonna go through some of the data now. Some of these charts may be a little difficult to see. If it's so, please just let me know because I see it close up and can also tell numbers here. And Janelle is gonna jump in as we start examining the data. This slide right here is just explaining the data we'll see. There are gonna be times we pause so you can read through this. If you'll just take a look here, it's defining the pages we're about to see, and then Janelle is gonna come in with those pages. So just take a look so that you see what's coming up.
And then let me know when you, I can't really see the screen, Linda, so just let me know when you switch, and then I'm gonna switch on my screen.
I sure will.
Oh, can I say normally, I don't know if this is happening, when we're watching on YouTube, if there's a presentation, we go away and the presentation is seen so that the people who are viewing on
Can see it
YouTube
there.
can read it. So I don't know if that's happening.
I will have to share my screen. What I can do is I can share, did anything?
I share my screen.
Oh, yeah, Janelle, you share your screen. Thank you.
Okay.
That's great. I hope we have sharing ability. You have it.
It should be pinned too, though. So we-
We'll find out in 1 second.
Yep.
Okay, it's coming. And you just gotta go to slideshow. One thing to note about the data you're about to see, you are going to see slides that are encompassing this prior year data, which is 2021-22. It's the full year. This is the first time we've ever done a full year. We used to split it by semesters, and then a pandemic happened. So last year's is now as a full year. The comparison data you're going to see is compared to the last time we had full year data, which is 2019 was the last time we had a chance to actually show this. So fall of 2019-2020 is what you're going to be looking at. Keep in mind that that data was compiled under our code of conduct. So it's two different measures. It's not apples to apples, but we're putting it there for number purposes as we talk. But keep in mind, 2019 is only half the year. So when you see the numbers, you're going to be like, what? But that was half the year in 2019. And this one's going to be a full year under a different behavior education plan. Okay, as we go through. And Janelle, I'm switching to the first slide. So we're on the race and gender.
Okay.
Yep.
So thank you all. I'm going to go through each of the slides. You know, there's going to be a lot of information here, so we recognize that trying to digest it all might be difficult. So, but we just want to get this information out so that we can get to the discussion afterwards. So this slide gives us our total count of infractions broken down by race and gender. The blue is male, and that orangish, I think it's orange, is for females.
And for any who had the question about non-binary, the state does not yet allow schools in the public school system in the state of Illinois to record it that way, which is why you only see male or female as a choice.
Our next slide is our top 5 infractions committed by race. And so now, forgive us for these abbreviations. There is a way that our system, Skyward, has to record long names of infractions, and we are limited by characters. So I'm going to tell you what they mean, but when you look at them, you may not know what they mean. So the excessive physical aggression is the first one, vaping, smoking, truants or unauthorized area. The fourth is behavior that disrupts the classroom learning. And then last is failure to respect property. And do know that for those of you who have been around a long time, you might notice, hopefully, that how we name infractions is different than in the past and what we use in our code of conduct. So these new labels for behaviors came along with having a better way of describing student behavior that didn't seem so, some people felt that it often felt kind of criminal-like. We used to use terms, for example, like battery, which were terms that are used in the criminal justice system. So we made a change in the behavior education plan to how we identify and label the behavior. So excessive physical aggression is what we use to describe a fight. And then failure to respect property is for theft and vandalism, just to give you, some context of what these mean. So these are our numbers. These are the most, the top 5 committed infractions broken down by race.
Janelle, we have a question.
Yes.
Individuals where you see the numbers.
The question is, are those individuals where we see the numbers? Those are individuals, if I'm not mistaken, correct? That's the number of individuals.
Actually, there could be repeat, so those are the numbers of
Infractions. Instances of, okay.
That's what I want.
Instances of crime.
So it's 68 instances. not
Correct.
15
Individual, correct, correct. Yes,
It seems like it would be of merit to have that calculation and number of individuals. Is that on some slide?
I don't know if this time the data pulled with the number of individuals. We have done that in the past, and when we get to another one, before I say it, I'm gonna wait till we get to that slide to see if that one represents the individuals versus the infractions.
Okay.
Has the capture, like the recidivism, there is one on here for that, I know.
Linda, 1 minute. If you guys want to ask a question, could you make sure you turn on the mic so they can hear you on YouTube one? Appreciate it. Thank you.
Go right ahead, Janelle.
So this is going to go back to our fall of 2019 school year. So do know that we usually from year to year do comparative data from year to year, semester to semester. So know that we are including this, but we simply are unable to make an apples to apples comparison based on the way that the data was broken down previously with the code of conduct. But what you're looking at is the number of infractions. At that time, the infractions were broken down by level. That is something that we no longer do. And then just to further explain what you're looking at. So level 1, 2, and 3, level 1 is the least serious level of infraction. Level 3 was the most serious or most severe level of infraction. The intervention column is, we have begun to try and record instances that we intervened as a dean team with an issue that was not as a result of some poor choice being made or some violation of the code of conduct happening. So for example, a student may come down and say, I'm having a conflict with someone and I'm trying not to get into a fight. And so the deans have begun trying to record when they intervene with students in that way, in a much more proactive way. And so the number 19 is certainly not an accurate reflection of the amount of times that happened in 2019, but we have begun to record them, more than we had done in the past. And so you'll see prevention on another slide, which I'll talk about as well, but that is not an infraction. So the 216 total infractions that you see, you should subtract the 19 from that, because those are actually proactive instances that we were working with kids to try to, prevent something bad from happening.
And you're gonna see that intervention, prevention again, as we go on. You will always need to subtract that number because those are not infractions. We'll see it again though.
So this is out, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, this is our recidivism slide. And so again, we do have the fall of 19 here, just as a comparison, but know that that is just first semester of that school year. And so the first column of this past school year, 21-22, represents 211. There's 300, first of all, there's 347 total students out of the roughly 3,300 and something students that we have total that had any infractions in the code of conduct. And Linda, you forgot your dancing figure that you that you like to do, but I do want to pause for a moment and celebrate the fact that out of our total student population, which is, you know, it surpasses 3,200, 347 students have had some kind of interaction in the discipline system. Of that 347, 211 had one interaction, 62 had 2, 31 had 3, 43 had more than 3. The other table, again, are those same numbers from the fall semester of the 19-20 school year.
So even returning from a pandemic, our numbers as a year, so the left you see a full year compared to just half the year in 2019. Question.
Yeah, I have a data question. So forgive me if it's shows my ignorance, but so for the category, like the category 3, now I'm looking at the left. So category 3, there are 31 students. In category 2, there are 62. I'm assuming that it's all the students who had 2, and then there's a new count, and it's all the students who had 3, but those students are not included in.
Correct, not,
Is that
so
right?
if you have 3, that includes your number 2. So it wouldn't be 1, you're in 1 and 2 and
So
yeah.
you're not double count.
Correct.
Or triple count.
Yes. If the computer's doing as it's supposed to. Yeah, and that does with raw data from the child's name, the way it's pulled, and then it sorts it. So sometimes.
And one question, so the definition of infraction change at all? So is the infraction of 2019 the same infraction of 2022, just call it differently, just want to make sure you do change what you might call infraction for 1922. So is apples to apples for the most part?
So as Janelle mentioned, some of the name of infractions did change.
Well, not
Like
necessarily name, just the actual infraction itself, so.
the
Okay.
infraction, 1-to-1, not change.
So consider the infraction still an infraction.
Correct, interaction with the system, the discipline system. Yep, infract, yep.
Okay, so I have a question. So just, not that I'm a data person, but it comes to mind that there was all that breakup before, which were the levels of infractions, how did it break out by race? So this is interesting, but it's not broken down to the same level as some of the other charts.
Correct, and that breakdown is gonna come. We're gonna show you actual infractions and how many of each. That's when I said it gets a little small to see. Yep. Janelle.
Ready?
Mhm.
Okay. So this is the So this is the infractions by response. So on the left-hand side are all of the infractions that can possibly be committed. And then going across is how we responded. So after school detention, and then there's another detention, which we realized we had 2 ways to say a student got a detention. And so we fixed that for this coming year. In-school reflection, out-of-school suspension, removal of past privileges, restorative practices, which I'll go back to in a moment, restricted lunch, verbal warning. And then going down the left, I am going to take just a minute or 2 to tell you what some of these are. I've already told you that behavior disrupts class learning. Some of them are obvious. I just want to make sure in ILE is inappropriate language and expression. There's a couple of those that is used typically when a student is being harassed in a certain way. I'll go back to intervention prevention in a moment. Physical force to students, so that's PHS, FC, TU, that's physical force to student. Play fighting, and then these POSS with the hyphen, that's possession or under the influence of marijuana less than 1 gram. And then there's one for more than a gram. This SER, THRT is serious threat, including social media. Taunting, but I think 2 or more, this 2 plus CMMT violence, that's 2 or more persons committing a violent act. Verbal, down here, verbal written threat. Weapon other than is a weapon other than a gun. And then the next one is weapon other than a gun with use. So a couple things that I'd like to point out is the intervention prevention line. So if you can see it, I don't know if you can. I gotta get this with myself.
It's kind of in the middle.
Okay.
So
So there's 100 and then the number 132 falls under restorative practices. And so what that is, that piece of data is, again, our efforts. It was the 19 on the other slide from 2019. Our efforts to record each time we proactively were engaging with a student about an issue that was not connected to some something that resulted in some kind of discipline consequence. So that's 132 times. And again, it probably is more, but we are getting better and better at stopping and recording when a teacher might say, you know, I'm having a struggle with a student. Can we have a conversation? So mediations, restorative conversations, circles, all of those things are captured in the restorative practices column. And we tried our best to connect it to the intervention prevention code in Skyward, because in the discipline kind of infraction section is the only place we have to record it, which is why it comes in the list of infractions. So I just want to point out what that 132 represents.
And then, you know, I'm gonna just point out for everyone to see, ISR is our in-school reflection. That's in the 1, 2, 3rd column in terms of responses, for a total of 303 that were handled with an in-school reflection versus out-of-school suspension. Out-of-school suspension total 41 for the year. So that's in terms of the number of infractions that received an out-of-school suspension for the entire year.
Right.
Right.
So this is not the time, but is there a time when we can reflect on, sort of dig in and reflect on particular things about which we have questions?
Yes, and so that's gonna come in our discussion. Yep, we're just at this time showing everybody and getting to that. Yep. Jen?
This may not also be the time, but I feel like it's important to say that 132 accounts that you see under intervention prevention, that is where you see relationship in place. So deans are not, you know, we are really working hard to rebrand what that connotation is, because we're not clear. It's really not my job to use the word consequence. I don't consequence students. We hold students accountable for the choices that they make. And that's a part of what we teach and learn. And that's how we become better citizens. That 132 is really relationship. And a lot of times that is students coming to us because they've developed relationships with us as being saying, I'm having a problem with a student, can't help it. And that's reflected, a lot of that is reflected in that number. That's happening quite a bit inside of this team.
And I would add too, Carla, that is the stuff that we're spending the greatest deal of time on. It doesn't, you know, yeah, those are, you know, mediations, those are difficult meetings that we're having with students and teachers, parents. And so those are, that 132 really doesn't really give it justice for the amount of time that is spent working with kids on, learning better ways to deal with conflict, and commending them for being proactive and coming and seeking out that help.
That was gonna be my question. You mentioned that, the parents. In which one of those columns might you see connection and involvement of parents?
Say that one more time.
Talking about that a little bit more.
She's asking in terms of on this data chart, where would you see specifically the interaction that's had with parents? Because this is pulled from Skyward and Skyward tracks the students, in the guidance notes that are kept, they keep notes that say who they spoke to and what happened during that conversation, but that's not going to be pulled in the data part.
But the mediations that we do that are involving parents are here.
Right. You're going to the next slide. Yeah, I tried to expand the page right here.
Okay, so, and I'm sorry, I keep having to move a screen so that I can see. So this is, can you tell me what the title is? Because I've got.
Yeah, this is all infractions by race. So it's still the 679 and it's broken down by the race of the students.
Yes.
So same data from the last chart, you're just gonna see a racial breakdown.
Yep. We'll take a moment and take a look at that. And the intervention prevention again is there. And we've already explained what that means.
Is there a slide that shows the racial breakdown of the population of the students at the school as compared to the infractions?
I just looked at our ISAC report, our ISBD report at a different meeting that we were in, and that has it, but it's not in this presentation. But I can definitely add it in terms of just the racial breakdown for school. Because of that slide, I do know that our Black student population is 18%. That's what's in our ISBD report card, 18%. And I want to say that the white population was 55%. But I will get that slide added. Thank you so much.
And that percent of rural number, what is percent total?
Percent of the 679. So it's making up.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Thank
how
you.
many, yeah,
Of the total number of
infractions.
behavioral occurrences. Okay.
Sorry.
One more question.
What was the total number of enrollment last year?
30, it was 33. I can't remember the last two digits. 33.
92.
92, 33, 92. And keep in mind that when you look at our total number, there are some students who are also placed off campus that are going to that whole 3,400 that we see. So we try to separate it out, like who's on the main campus and who's like at site and different placements as well. But 33. I remember that's when they were trying to charge us for something. I'm like, no, I'm not giving it to all of us. Yeah. I was like, give me less than that. Okay, I'm going to the next slide. Everyone's seen? Okay. All right, Janelle.
Okay. Is this the next slide?
Yes.
So this is from 2019. So again, it's going to look a little different. We looked at level 2 and level 3 infractions. Please ignore the highlights. They should not be there. They mean nothing. They meant something in 2019. They mean nothing for this discussion. And so we, at the time, we're breaking down by level and then by race, the infractions that were committed.
And as Janelle told you, you can see some of the older names of infractions, like battery, active defiance, gross, right? You'll see those, the naming from before.
The disruption in classroom learning, what sort of categories would that fall under here?
So the question, Janelle, is where would disruption of classroom learning be in this chart?
So that was our disruptive behavior, which I don't think, it must have been a level 1.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's not even.
No, these were just level 2 and level 3 infractions. And Janelle, can you speak to what the minimum and maximum consequences were when we had level 2 and 3? Do you remember that?
Well, so it evolved over the years. Those of you who have been around a long time would remember that fighting, battery, some of these on here resulted in several days of out of school suspension. We have been aiming to have less punitive responses to poor choices for quite some time. And we have done that. I was here when, a fight automatically resulted in 3 days of out of school, actually 5 days of out of school suspension. When any kind of drug possession resulted in 10 days of out of school, and depending on how much may have been a recommendation for expulsion. So over the years, we have dramatically decreased the severity of how we respond to student poor choices. That was in place, the goal of it at least, and the efforts towards it have been in place for quite some time. And then Senate Bill 100 came along and really limited the ability to use that kind of exclusionary response even more. And so as of now, the levels that you see if you're looking at our behavior education plan are the levels of responses, instead of this way that you're looking at now was the level of infraction. And so there are very few infractions that result in automatic 5 and 10 days of out of school suspension. So there's been a significant change in how we respond to student discipline issues over the years.
So just a reminder, out of 679 infractions, 41 instances of out of school of those.
All right.
Progressing to the next slide.
So this is our restorative responses. Again, our attempt, this is the 132 that we talked about before. So this past school year, we did our best to try to record each time that we interacted with a student in a proactive way. In the fall of 2019, was broken down slightly differently, but you can see that when we tried to count the number of mediations, restorative conversations, which there were more, we just were not doing a good job of counting these things. And some of those two are the more restorative. Some of the dean conferences were also restorative conversations. This is when we were still working with the language. And we have dean conference, dean student counselor conference, dean teacher student conference. We had all these different ways to say the same thing, all of which we have cleaned up as we work on our reporting now. But these were our efforts to display how we were trying to react to behavior issues in a less punitive fashion back in 19. Okay.
Thank you, Janelle. So when we think about what has gone into the work that you are seeing the data from, there were many more restorative efforts done just school-wide than even you see, captured in the data that is how we record it when the deans are formally addressing a infraction. And so we want to highlight some of those things because it's been a heavy lift for our entire building. And it's been showing results that everyone has, especially in this year, have been talking about. And so some of the things just to point out, a change in our responses to tardy to class. I don't know if you all remember last year, we had a whole bunch of people who were like, stop coming after our kids for being tardy. They have to be in class. Like being in class is a thing, and on time helps the learning environment for everyone. And the actions that we took to do that in terms of our 5 tardies being an unexcused absence and some of our call sweeps, which were not popular, but served the purpose, got students in class and were able to keep the learning environment viable and going. Overall growth in the positively in our school culture, just in terms of, as you heard Carla speaking about the relationship building, like people understanding that that's the foundation for everything. The agreements we make in our classrooms when we start, so that students understand that they are a key part of what happens, but that we work in community with one another. Like no one person should be taking the lead over any other persons in the room. And so it's important that we're building that in our spaces. Understanding the importance of cultivating those relationships, not just teacher to student, but also peer to peer, has been very important. The immediate wraparound restorative services for students is a part of our in-school reflection. So no longer do you sit in a room, we just give you work and you sit there for every period of the day doing work. The individuals who work in that space with our students are working with them to understand the harm that was caused. They work with our social workers as they're building the behavior plans, because everyone who stops in that space has to understand that this behavior that landed us here has to be changed. And we have to figure out, do we have the skills to do that? And if not, how do we grow those skills to make sure that that happens? They take tours around the building, visiting sometimes the spaces in which infractions occurred, to talk about what happened in this space while we're out of that moment, right? The heat of the moment that sometimes gets us into certain instances, like actually talking them through that and understanding it's a learning experience and allowing the students to reflect on that. Increased use and documentation, as Janelle talked about, of restorative responses in our spaces, but not just reactively. So when you see what we saw in data, we're reacting to instances that have occurred. But there's a whole front end to the work of where the intervention prevention helps us, which is the recognizing before you get to that moment, how to not push the button, how to not get next to the button, so that you don't even have an option to click the button. But it's talking about the choices that we have and how we all own those choices to make them. And then better student acknowledgement about the harm that's caused. So oftentimes, this is the piece that we don't spend enough time on, because it has to be understood that the reason we are here in this moment and that this is a big deal to whomever this happened to is because some kind of harm was caused as this happened. And where we may not understand why it hurt you, it's understanding that it hurt you, and that's enough. I think so many times we spend a lot of time, even our students are learning to do this on, I don't know why you're upset about that. Doesn't matter. Like if you are hurt, we have to deal in that and not try to analyze why you took it that way, even though I did. And that's something that as young people, like older, we learn how to curb that behavior. We might think it, but we don't say it. As kids, they're like, I don't know why you're bothered, but they have to learn how to understand that. And this is that space where we have learned this, we have to do that with our students. So, yeah.
I just want to share this, it's a heavy lift, because it is a complete shift in the way we think about how we're working with our students. So it's a heavy lift, but we are starting to see the progress in it. So I'll just share, yesterday we had 2 students who interrupted the teacher's classroom from the hallway, which was disrespectful to the learning environment, to the students in the environment, disruptive. And so another dean and I partnered together, worked with those 2 students to understand where they knew where they went wrong. They acknowledged it right away. We told them yesterday, we are going to arrange for you to go back into that space. Well, originally they said, can we apologize to that teacher? We owe that class for more. You caused harm to that entire class. You disrupted their learning time. We told, and the students agreed that we need to go back to that classroom. Today was really busy, so the DNR did not get to those 2 students. Before I came to this meeting, those 2 students emailed Mr. Silver and myself and said, you didn't call us today, and we need to go to that classroom. Like, that doesn't happen everywhere. And so I was like, I am so sorry. Well, tomorrow, second period, we will get you there. But it's owning that and understanding that I took something away from the teacher who was really working hard to give those students what they came here for. And I took something away from the kids who were focused on learning in that space. I need to make that right. And I think that's something like we don't see, you're not gonna see it in droves. Like, but if we're paying attention to what's happening, we'll start to see those corners being turned. We'll start to see the kids thinking about how they're engaging with each other, with students, with the adults, and they're learning that the behavior is not acceptable, and we're embracing them to make a better choice. And so I think that's worth mentioning, that our students are starting to make that choice.
And then those are also conversations, to go back to what Gina's question was, that we're having with parents, right? Because what I know for sure is that my parents are my students' fiercest advocates, as they should be. But we also have to, in the sense of being accountable, we have to be accountable. We can't make excuses. And so we still have to fix the wrong that was done. And sometimes we have to help parents see it still was wrong in that situation. We can still go back and fix that, even if, we wish it had happened and gone another way. But we still have to have those conversations, because we can't stand on the hill of righteousness while we have other people sitting in the valley. And that's important to recognize. We can all be on the same plane, and it takes nothing away from your strength, your power, your determination, your greatness to be able to have that level of conversation with individuals. And we have to teach our students that if we want them to be compassionate adults who don't storm the cabin. All right, so, I'm sorry. I did, I'm sorry. Okay, so that last slide, Janelle. So the questions that are here, looking forward, how have our students changed? How is this data used to inform our practices and help change students? What is our true understanding of the infractions being committed? We're trying to tell a story with this data, but also figure out what our part is in this, right? Janelle talked about my dancing slide that I like, because I've worked in other schools besides Oak Park, and to hear that only 300 students have, out of 10% of your student bodies actually having an instance of, like, most people who've been at another school are like it is a moment for celebration, because it's rare. And I tell the adults in here when I have the opportunity to, and I see there's a student, but there's more of them than us. Every day, and the fact that we can stay in community with one another and get to be the excellent learning facility that we are is incredible, right? But that doesn't mean we don't have work to do, right? It doesn't mean we're not frustrated. It doesn't mean that we didn't sit 2 hours today mediating a conflict. This is work. Every day it takes an amount of effort that is sometimes behind the scene, and leaves some people who are dealing with things to say, what's happening? Nothing happens to kids around here, right? We're trying to dispel that, because I wanted everyone to understand, as we came back to school this year, we all have to be in this work. If we leave it to the 5 deans, there's going to be chaos. We all have to play a part in the restructuring of our community. And what does that truly mean? So we kind of want to look at, when we talk about proactive and reactive, right? We have a system to react to these things. We also can look at our proactive nature in terms of addressing these. And this is going to go back to examining some of the data that we talked about earlier. But we've got some great things in the works that we're doing that we want to continue to build on, but it's not a place to say we're satisfied. So that's not what you hear us saying. So Janelle's going to launch us into our discussion here in terms of the data that we've seen.
So historically, and this is not just an OPRF problem, but it is a problem, in many places, about the overrepresentation of students of color in our discipline system. And over the years, there has been a mindset that, well, we're too punitive, we are too harsh. And so we have worked to change that. We have worked to have less punitive, less harsh responses to student behaviors, and drastic changes, as I've already mentioned. However, here we are with, I think, you know, what people hopefully would agree are certainly way less severe responses to poor choices than in the past, and then what exists in other schools. We've even worked to take some of the subjective infractions out of the code of conduct. For those of you who have been around for a while, for example, remember the infraction that was called active defiance, and how, you know, you might interact with a student one way and feel that they're, you know, a certain level of defiance, and I might view that completely differently. And we asked teachers even to engage with certain behaviors that previously got written up for a discipline referral and sent out of class. With the behavior education plan, we asked teachers to do, you know, work more with some of those lower level behaviors first before a child is put out of class and having to be intervened with by a dean, which also changes their interaction with the discipline system and these numbers that you're looking at. And yet here we are. We still have that overrepresentation. But these, you know, most of, if not all of these offenses are not subjective, right? A fight happened. Drug possession happened. Under the influence happened. Bullying happened. These things happen. This is not, you know, somebody's misperception or biased perception of something that occurred. And so the question is, what are we thinking about on the front end? We could actually get to a point where we said no consequences, right? Nothing punitive, no suspensions, no nothing. The acts are still happening. And my question is, what say we now? We think that we have been trying to work proactively, building why, because maybe some of these acts are occurring because there is simply a skill deficit. Students need more tools in their toolbox to deal with difficult situations. Is it mental health? We all know that there has been a increase in the mental health issues that our students are experiencing. Is it trauma? We also know that the amount of trauma that students have experienced seems to be increasing in comparison to in the past, or at least we know more about it now. And in response to that, we have done things such as we have Curtis Diggs sitting there, we have a person, you know, specifically to help the school become more trauma informed so that we react to students differently. We have a robust offering of mental health services that our social workers provide with our various groups, social work groups, and other interventions that the social work staff are doing. And yet here we are with these acts are still happening. And so what we wanted to engage in conversation about is what else? What more do we feel as a school we can be doing?
And so this begins our discussion, just to make sure we're aware. It's 7:35. We have about what, 10 minutes? Okay. Okay. So, question, feedback, comments. This would be that time.
So let's move into circle, and then that way we can get some feedback from everyone and get to know each other in the process. So if we could move into the inside, you can bring your notes with you if your questions are on that. That would be awesome.
Lisa, are we okay without the mics or should it? I think it should be a talking piece if you guys don't mind, like I'm sure.
This is a talking piece because we have to talk.
Or y'all could just grab a mic behind you. Let's talk.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure everyone is heard. So Ms. Harris, before you start, this is Jacob Drews. He's one of our student council representative. I asked him to sit in and just observe to see if there's something that you might want to be a part of as a student rep for the committee. So
So appreciate you being here. For sure. So, the question, we're gonna go around, and the round, this is our talking point. I was trying not to touch it, but I know it's going on, and that's all I'm asking. Everything we've seen, right, of everything we've seen, what is standing out for you? And what is something you would like to see, and understand more, is really what I'm thinking was. Yeah. Is that, yeah? We're gonna go this way.
It's coming, right? What I said next to you.
So I have to start.
And introduce yourself again.
Oh, I'm Jacob Conklin, history teacher, and I don't know, I've seen this data for, 15 years, 18 years, or however long I've been here. And it sounds like I'm glad we got rid of a lot of the old terms and a lot of the old kind of things students are getting in trouble for. I think we've seen a lot of positive changes, especially this year. I think that's much better this year than last year. I think the cell phone policy has been a blessing. It's been just an awesome experience, and like I don't have to watch videos of fights anymore, which is very awesome. And that used to be like the big thing. So that's all I have.
Kaylee Gassino, and I'm a math teacher. This is my first time, so I'm a little nervous. But I will share that I feel like I'm like a really big thinker. So I have like really big thoughts and ideas, and I'll throw them out there. So just take that with a grain of salt. Just know that I have crazy, wild ideas. Sometimes they work, sometimes they're just ideas. So when I see this information, also I should say that I am a first year teacher at this school. I was a substitute teacher in CPS. So the amount of disrespect as a substitute teacher in CPS that I saw, like here is amazing. I love coming over. Like I love my students so much. But
Is that Janelle talking?
No.
I can't see.
okay, that's Kaylee.
Oh, thank you. There's another Janelle that was on the committee before.
So something that comes to my mind, I just think of like definitely working with parents and what that looks like. And if there was more that we can be doing, like if there's like fun parent student nights that we could be having and reaching out to parents that, students that might be whatever, engaging and doing things that are not good. If there was like a class that we had to help students, if there's something along those lines, or we're working with students one-on-one in a classroom, and I don't know, something like that. And also I know that we only have 5 deans, and I know that's a lot to put on them. So like what can we also be doing? And I know as a teacher, we do stuff in the classroom, but is there more that can be happening? I don't know, those are just kind of the thoughts, like how can we be connecting with parents more if we're doing fun things at their school and connecting with more families. So I think that's kind of where a lot of it starts too. Because I know that at home sometimes they're dealing with a lot of things from school, and it's like the last thing they want to do is look at an equation and need to help how to solve it.
No, Susan. You can hear me okay? Yes. Okay, great, thanks. I'm really not sure how to contribute significantly to the conversation. I'm really pleased to hear that staff here are pleased and can tell the difference. The examples you gave about the kinds of conversations that are happening and kids coming forward, that example is just like, it sounds really great. And, so that's good to hear that you're seeing that kind of change in behavior. And I'd say how does, the big question is how do you spread it? How does it continue on and get bigger? I don't know the answer to it. Good one. Big ideas to solve that, but it's so that's my contribution.
Hi, it sounds so weird. I'm Raquel. I'm an English teacher and instructional coach, and I've also been, I guess, an ad hoc member of Linda's Cultural Building Committee. So what immediately comes to mind is that I really appreciate the framing of the conversation, first of all, where we're acknowledging the work that has been done, but challenging ourselves to continue to dig in deeper. So I immediately think about making sure that we equip our staff members with some really specific tools and structures within the classrooms. So I had the pleasure once of taking a training called No Nonsense Nurturer. It kind of aligns with Zaretta Hammond's ideas of being a warm demander. So how can we make sure that we dig into really specific ways for teachers and staff members overall to embody those habits of demanding high expectations for students, but also remaining warm and culturally responsive in the process. So, really making an investment in school-wide professional learning, overtly teaching the curriculum of behavior, thinking of behavior as a curriculum to be taught both within and outside of the classroom. Have we overtly taught students how we'd like them to interact with each other in the hallways, how we'd like them to interact with each other in the lunchrooms? And so some of that we've already been brainstorming in the Culture of the Building Committee. So I just like to see that begin to come to fruition. So.
Hi, I'm Jacob. I'm a senior here at OPRF. Very pleased to be here. It's been interesting seeing all that information. And I guess outside of like the hard numbers that we've seen, I think there's been a massive difference since my freshman year. I remember in the lunchrooms, especially, there was constantly fighting. At least once a week, there would be a massive fight in the hallways. There was always yelling and just. It was kind of like the Wild West a little bit. And I definitely think because of the good work of this committee and Ms. Parker and Ms. Bishop and all the other deans this year and last year too, there's definitely been a noticeable reduction in that. I think students are more respectful to one another. There's a lot less fights just from my own perception, especially in lunchrooms. And I guess if there was one thing that could be done, I think in the community, especially among parents, like on Facebook pages and such, there is a bit of the perception that, nothing is done to students. It's obviously not true, but they might not be getting detentions, but there's still like all these new more restorative tactics that are being used that are more effective. And I think just communicating that out to the community that there is something being done. And yes, we're not suspending everyone, but better things are happening.
Sherilyn Jones McLeod, I'm the director of campus safety, and just a building of what has already been said. I'm not originally from Fargo, Illinois, which is New York, spent most of the years in Baltimore City, doing work inside of schools, community, outreach, you name it, did it. But to build off of the big ideas and Jacob, what Jacob just said, imagining a school without walls, like really going out and educating our families and dealing with our families, because our students are living the trauma that they're experiencing at home.
So we are here putting a Band-Aid on trauma that is way deeper than anything we can deal with inside of the school. And so in school, in Baltimore City, 98% of the population is impoverished. It's a very desolate city. There's a lot of people doing great work, but we don't even have there's no choice. We have to include. So most schools are community schools. Most schools offer resources for families to come into the school. The school is open most days and weekends for families to come in. We partner with the Department of Social Services so that families who can't go to the office because they're at work comes to school in the evenings. Like, we just think outside of the box because we don't have a choice. Otherwise, we won't teach any children. They'll only be arrested. And so, although that is not the demographic that's in here, in Oak Park, if we can take the mindset of some of our other communities and forget these walls. Oak Park is very small. Go as far as Roosevelt, all the way to North Avenue, like, let's go tip to tip. Let's go all the way into River Forest. There are families who need us way beyond math and science and English. They need our help. And we have so many resources. We are resource rich in the building, but all of our resources, for the most part, stay in the building. We have some resources that reach out, but we need to go beyond. And I think that is the ticket, because we can reach a family. If we pour into the student all day and we go home and their families fight, their families are dealing with trauma. All that we spent the time is going out the window. So we have to reach beyond the walls here, go out, encourage, help, counsel, whatever we can do to the families that we get a different product coming into the building. And we saw that today. We met with a parent and the responses were, this is what we do. We fight. How do I expect something different from a child if this is what mom is coming to the school and telling the principal, the dean, and the director of safety, we fight, that's what we do. So we have to go beyond just the school.
I appreciate that the response to behavior has changed. I think that we also need to get a better understanding of where the behavior is coming from. So a lot of times students are behavior that they either don't feel safe or they don't feel loved. We have to kind of get a breakdown of where the behavior is coming from so that we can then provide that student with what they need. Because the behavior could be popular pandas. That's one thing. On the other hand, we need to widen and strengthen our students' toolbox. So teaching them those FEL competencies, like how to self-regulate, how to be self-aware. When I start to feel like this is how I respond. But what do you do when you start to feel like this before you respond out in aggression or whatever? Like teaching those things, teaching them about the trusted and safe spaces and adults taking those who, when they feel themselves being escalated. Just so that the relationship building, thinking of like, I can do this and this can happen to me, or I can do this and this can happen to me. Because being accountable for their actions and the consequences, it could either be good or bad. So if I make a responsible decision, what does that look like? So I think we just need to hone in more on the student side, what those SEL skills are to teach those to them, and then on the adult side, where is this behavior stemming from and how can we address it with the students so that we don't keep doing it with her.
Good evening again, Carla Williams, Dean of Students. Let me just first start by saying I knew I should have sat 2 seats to the right. I knew that. Because I should not have sat next to the trauma and the former trauma person and want to talk about trauma. So that was a bad choice. However, there's so much work to be done. There's still space for me to talk here. I want to say, and forgive me because I come across sometimes really blunt, but that's just the nature of things. We need to pass a couple of truths around. And we really need to, everybody take a sip from that. And let's be honest about acknowledging what this perception is of an OPRF student, and acknowledge that all of our kids are not coming in here with the same experiences. That's the first thing we need to do, because then we can respond to what's coming through the door in lieu of responding to what we want coming through the door. It's two different things.
And we're missing our kids in droves because we're pretending that we don't have an issue where we do. And it's not their fault. Our kids are coming in here wanting to be the best person that they can be and don't have the skill set to do it. It's our responsibility to teach that to them. Also, our kids are coming in with this confusion because we're telling them to be this person, and at home is what you're saying, you better be this person, and this is how we survive. Our students' trauma level is greater than what we thought it was. We say kids don't have problems, our kids have real issues. They have real issues and they are burying themselves in it. They don't know how to climb out. And so we have some responsibilities to be really open and honest about what's happening with our students and respond to that. Like I told Ms. Parker, I still have about 10 good years in me that I want to give students. But I only want to deal with the real stuff. Like, I don't want to deal with this big stuff. I don't want to waste my time or my energy on that. I have kids that need our help. I want to help them and their families because they don't have the resources and they don't have an understanding of what to do next. So we need to provide that to students and families. Then we also need to acknowledge that COVID did a lot of damage to our students in terms of understanding social skills and how to interact and engage with other people. Kids came back from COVID with either delayed social skills or diminished social skills. And they didn't talk to people for a long time. It was all, that's it. Can't have a conversation with a student right now for 2 minutes. I put the phone down, give me you for 2 minutes. And so our kids they don't have those tools. They don't have those skill sets. We are rebuilding, or we're in a rebuilding stage, but we have to take the time to acknowledge what it is that needs to be rebuilt. And I spend our energy doing that. I think we can go on.
Now, I'm Latanya Applewhite, Executive Director of Equity and Student Success. And honestly, I don't know what else there is to say, except I am a firm believer in building partnerships with parents. I don't think that you can do any work with a student that is going to be long-lasting, relevant, or beneficial to the student without bringing in the efforts of the parent. Like you said, they do go home, they are there. We send them back with everything that we have, and then they come back into the building, sometimes forgetting everything that we have worked hard to build up in them. And often it is not their fault, and it's not the fault of some of their parents, because some of the parents don't have the tools, the knowledge, and the information. And we have to build relationships with parents to bring them in so that we can provide what they need as well. So there were resources from places that I've been before that have offered that to parents. I think we had a version of Parent University and PPS that there were certain schools in certain areas where parents could come in all day long and get the tools and resources they need. I had a conversation with a parent before whose daughter was doing all kinds of things, and mom broke down in tears and said to me, I can't tell her not to do these things because I'm not the person that she can look up to. Mom wasn't a high school graduate. Mom couldn't hold down a job. Mom was doing everything to make ends meet, but she was not a model for her daughter. And she was needing help herself. So her daughter wouldn't listen to her, because sometimes if you're not the model, if you're not the example, that's what these students are going home to. So we need to provide resources and be of assistance. We are a learning institution. We are an environment where we provide these opportunities and chances for our students. And that may mean providing them for their parents so that they can have a chance and an opportunity. And so whatever that means, so how do we better educate our parents so that we can reach our students? So that may mean providing resources so that they can get their GED, so that they can build resumes. And so sometimes that number of students of color is high because their resources is low. So how do we help them build that level of achievement in the example of setting higher expectations for them? Who's at home setting it for them? If we're here doing it, or when they go home, who's doing it for them? Who's telling them that they can? Who's telling them that we're expecting this of you? So it's not enough that I'm saying it, that Ms. Parker is saying it, that Ms. Bishop is saying it, that Carla is saying it, but who's saying it at home? And so we need to make sure they're getting it holistically from all ends of the spectrum.
Before you go, I just want to point out that our meeting is scheduled to end in 5 minutes. But I just want to ask the group if we could extend to 8:15 to just ensure that everyone gets an opportunity to share before everyone, if you need to leave, by all means, in 5 minutes, you have to go, but I would love for us to get through the rest of it. So.
And thank you again for just your attention to the presentation. I also want to just say how humbled I am to lead this institution in the manner that I do, because it never fails that I can see that we care about the work that we're doing, and that is the basis and foundation for making any change. And so I'm very appreciative to each and every one of you and the voices who you represent in this circle, because that's important. I did leave this slide up on purpose because I do want you to digest the numbers. And specifically, I want you to look in each racial category to see the higher numbers in each one, because I would like us to become that school that is okay with giving students what they need, even if it means it doesn't go to everyone. And the reason for that is, as we try to catch everyone with the same thing, you're not giving the one thing to the person who needs it. And I know from my experience of being here at the school and the work that I do, I often get this, it has to be everyone. You gotta invite everyone to the meeting. You gotta have everyone sitting there. And I understand where that comes from. But when I see numbers where we have aggression with excessive physical aggression at 69 for Black students, my question is, what do Black students need around fighting that is not going to scare everyone, that we give them that, so that I can give what my white students need for vaping, what my Hispanic students need for, do you see what I'm saying? We have to unpack the data and be okay with giving people what they need without feeling like someone's not getting something. And so when you look at this, I would like us to start thinking as a group, how do we provide that proactive work to the students in the areas of their needs so that they can meet the bars we are setting of excellence for all, without thinking we are robbing someone else of that experience. So that's my hope, that's my wish, and I'm in partnership in that work with anyone who wants to do that.
And Laura Sakiana, just two small things to add to this really rich and deep conversation. And the first is, yes, what we were struck by, and it was what Janelle brought up, the removal of the subjective infractions. Because then when there is a fight, the conversation is about like, you know, did you disrespect the teacher? Or did you say this? I didn't say that. It's what, this is what happened. What do we need to do to get you what you need now? What do we need to do to move things forward now? So I really appreciated that. And the second was, is there an opportunity as you all move forward to bring those students who have successfully moved through this process, leadership opportunities to help those students that are coming up? So those were the two things.
Thank you, Felicia Starks Turner. I just want to say to the staff, thank you. It's, you know, been a long road and you all have stayed the course. So thank you for your continued work. And I'd also say that as a parent and a staff member in District 97, I appreciate seeing this work because we are doing similar work. We are not working like side by side, but we are doing this foundation in District 97 too. And so I think that as a professional, as a parent, that the students that matriculate to the high school and are also being met with restorative types of approaches to choices that students make. So that's really good. And then when Sherwin talked about, you know, extending the borders, because we too are working on bringing parents in and working in partnership with them for academic learning and also for social emotional learning. So that continuum is definitely happening. It's exciting to me as a community member with some of the other things that we're doing in partnership with the village and 2 school districts, looking at our students and our families really holistically and outside of these, walls that we have confined to. Thank you.
Kurt Henry, who's a school board member. Not much to add. It's a really great conversation. Public sense of carry a lot. Public sense of carry a lot. Y'all still hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So, I'm sorry, you 97?
Yes.
What was your position?
I'm associate.
Okay, perfect. So my son, my daughter's in college now, she's in OPRF, and I was 5 years old. Started over. He's in kindergarten, and what I've noticed is the words he's using now is very surprising. He's articulating his feelings, which is important. I'll get to that why kind of gets you why the number's so high in a second. So we're saying, oh, I feel sad about this, but now he's using it against it as a weapon. It's time to go to bed. Oh, I feel sad, you're hurting my feelings, and I'm like, that's not right when you're using it, but I can't say doesn't matter. I still acknowledge it. So I'm proud of him, but I'm kind of like, you're weaponizing the tools you're gonna use with those things. But I take him on his name. He was mean to me, and here's why. He's explained, which before it's been a meltdown, crying, a tantrum. So it's interesting. So why the number's so high, it's 68, because that's not tools you normally have. So, and why the fight, because she just mom that said we fight, yeah. That's what we do. And what we do really means is we've been surviving for entire existence in the Americas and West Indies and South America. We've been surviving, right? And if you look at historically, if it was fighting for something, get to something, else survival mode. Which I ask us to now is go to thriving mode. We don't know how to do that yet as a community because mostly we weren't allowed to. We just couldn't because we had to just survive day to day from slavery to destruction to Jim Crow to lynching. You had a lot of time to just survive. So is violence a surprise? Why? Is that a surprise? Because we're always fighting for something. So me myself, I started doing therapy a year and a half ago, I'll say, because I was trying to understand why we react certain kind of ways, right? Not that I was just out of control, but it's a way that I can actually get my mind thoughts easier together. Now I'm 41, so imagine these kids are 15, 14 hormones. Why would they know how to do it if they're not taught, right? So we have to look at it from a more holistic standpoint of how do we get here? Why are we still here? How do we move past that? I was out a couple of days ago with some guys, and it was like, I don't just an OPR anymore. If you do discipline, yeah, I believe discipline. But what they want is a response that's just going to punish them, right? And we have a whole prison system full of that, right? So that's not the right reaction. And so for me, the last thing I'll say is I'm interested to learn how we have the agreement in place. We got to share data, how 97 can actually work together, because if you're starting at 14, it's kind of late. Let's be honest about it, right? That's kind of late. You're trying to change the whole mindset of thinking at 14, but if you start like my son 5 years old, and it continues. How are we working together to do that as a collaborative group? Are we doing that? Is there some things in place? I'd love to help any way I can. If that's happening, great, because hear my 5-year-old tell me how his feelings are hurt or make him sad all the time. He has to go to bed or to brush his teeth. I try to laugh and like, they're using it so wrong, but I'm proud of using the tools you get it, but they'll learn that in kindergarten. School, you're just starting. Like, how is this happening? So there's a program there's
Second step.
what's it called?
Second step.
Yeah, and it's like we get it like every week. Oh, this we're doing this week. I'm like, this is pretty impressive, right? And I think that's the solution. So until you get to the point where you can address the root cause of all this aggression and violence, you get the same thing. Because it's an easy response to just get angry and fight, as opposed to I feel upset. Why? Like the whole feelings wheel you see before, the feelings wheel. You can attach your feelings to the emotion and why. That's how I think you kind of address that. So that's just my 2 cents. Don't really think much to add. But a great discussion. Look what you guys are doing. I love your responses, young man. Thank you for coming in and talking. Appreciate it. That's it.
Sarah Schreiber. Professionally, I'm with an organization called Prevent School Violence Illinois, which is statewide, and we focus wholly on culture and climate in schools and communities, and try not to see that the walls. I shouldn't sit at this end because I have so many more big ideas just listening to all of you that I've written down. And I'm not gonna go through, but one question I have, just,
But you can always email them to Lisa and she can send them to the.
I will definitely do. Thank you. One procedural question I have, which I can also ask Lisa later, is do we have committees to dig into the work when we're not having these monthly meetings? And that's just a question. So, shout out to Raquel and Carla and Dr. Linda. Yeah. Your comments, I just thought they really struck me, the frame of this conversation and the things that have happened and that are happening. To acknowledge those and to celebrate those, and to tell the truth. In Oak Park, there's a tendency not to want to really tell the truth and be direct, so I'm on your direct team. And then what did I write here about? Oh, equity. What you were saying, giving people what they need, right? And not everyone has to have the same thing. That is equity. And people don't understand what equity actually is. It isn't equality. And that's okay, it's good. They're two separate things. So I just shout out for that because people don't understand that. So I was struck by the continued disproportionality in consequences for Black and Latinx students. I'm not surprised, and I'm still disappointed. And so I want to know more, and I've heard a lot of you talk about this, but what accounts for that? Because even though our numbers are smaller, which is to be celebrated, the disproportionality of the rates are really the same as they've been. So this is in no particular order, but I have the urge to take particular categories like vaping and smoking and really dig into them. Because I wrote down all the different things we do, and are there responses we can have that we're not doing that might be more effective? And what are those, like harm reduction? I would love to be really creative with these data. I love looking at these lists. A lot of people don't. And a lot of people don't have the chance to see this stuff and to dig into it like this. And there's some really creative things we can do with data, and I'm really into that. I'm super interested, and Dr. Linda knows this, about Mensa and about how all of this connects with Mensa, and who's at Mensa, and are all of those out of school folks out of school at Mensa or doing other stuff. So I'm very interested in that. And my longest running partnership with the school is an alternative school. It's the West Coast RSSP. And I know I love that place so much, and they do things so well. So I'm very interested in that. In terms of engaging students and parents in real, meaningful, and authentic ways as community members, there are some really cool methodologies of communities of practice for parents. And then there's an RJ Restorative Justice Ambassador kind of team or program that students do in various schools, and so they're kind of leading the charge. So the students you're talking about who have taken it upon themselves to lead, you know, I thought of them being in that group, and so this is something about leadership too. So I guess finally, let's pay parents to do the learning. I'm all about paying the parents and paying students who take the time and make the effort to really dig in and learn. And you know, people have multiple jobs, they don't have time, they don't have resources. Let's give them resources so that for you know, an hour a month or however long it is, they can be present. So I think we have that money. Yeah, just my sense. Thank you.
Hi, this is Karen Grimes. Just a few tidbits. So much has been so richly discussed tonight. In reflecting on this, as a former school social worker with CPS, we had all sorts of different programs. Second Step, I was so impressed with my youngest children. I'm so glad to hear that Dean and is using it. So I wasn't aware that it started. I think before it's just Second Step. I think it's a wonderful program. It's just children have to use it, But and I'm so pleased that there's a focus on relationship. I think that that is the core of all change. But if you're only thinking that community, which our community members apparently think we should still be doing, that's the opposite of what we need. Relationship is what it's all about. I think there was some reference in a coy way about not raising children that are going to storm the Capitol, but these skills that we're trying to teach the kids are not just to get on in their schools, they're for the future, but for the society to get on to be civically engaged. And so it's, we have a climate left to support that. But, we'll have civically engaged students coming out of what we're at.
Hi, everyone, my name is Larry Chandler. I am, I do data work with the district now for a number of years. I've been with this committee since it started. And so this has been great to see. Just real quick, I think, so playing with data is like my jam. So we would definitely do more of that. There's a lot of interesting things to see here. And I think that the fact that the top line numbers still look similar is indicative of the comment that a lot of this work does lie outside of these walls. The C, culture, right? The best definition of culture I've heard is that it's essentially rules. And we have a blessing, I think, to be in a space where a lot of different cultures come together. A lot of people come to this place from different lived experiences. Some are cultural rules to survive, rules to thrive, depending on how you're coming into the space. But I think the onus is upon us to really use this opportunity to forge a shared culture, shared values. So if this is the bar, is this our bar or is this a bar that's been set that everyone is now trying to reach? And that takes work. A culture clash, that's a thing, right? So it is messy, but there's trust that needs to be built and it requires persistence. And so I appreciate that I can see the work that's being done, and I recognize the reasons why there's work to do. And I'll just say that yes, we don't have to do the work outside the walls alone. Right? There's 97, there's 90, there's the library. This is a very blessed community with a lot of resources, and there is money in this community to actually do things, but it's a matter of having the will and tenacity to make that work
happen. Good evening again. Melanie McQueen with Apple, and I'm also a parent at Recidivism Junior, so I was going to double duty. We are not like other schools, and that's my thought process that I hope spreads. And I do think that we are setting the bar, we are different, and our students are a pleasure. I run into amazing students. Every time I come onto campus, they always hold the door open for me. The problem is we do have some students that are dealing with their own wars, whether it's within their home, within themselves, or within the classroom. And I also think that social media perpetuates the violence as a way to means. Will Smith just showed us how to handle adverse situations, and to some he's in the epitome of Black excellence. I have a freshman here, and I was so excited for her to finally be with her sister again. They're 2 years apart. And when I asked her how her first, 30 days of school was, her response was the same as our student was here today. There's fights every other day in the lunchroom. And I was like, really? I didn't hear about that. Normally I hear something's going on, but that had changed, over time, that had changed, but that was her perception. Not her perception, but that's what she saw, and she didn't feel like she was in, a place of learning. As we're seeing the data, I too am asking, are we digging in to see if trauma at home is the culprit? That was one of the things I've been a part of tons of studies just across the city of Chicago when I was in healthcare for 4 years, and we were fighting for mental health, for the doors to stay open. And that's what they were saying, that there was always something happening at home. And I've worked with Mr. Silver in the past, and his issue was always, he's loving on his students with every fiber of his being, but he can't get anyone to pick up the phone. So, hopefully when we get into that part of it, if we do trace it back to trauma, I would like to know how much that's affecting the numbers. And I would also like to know, of all the resources that we do have, how much is it being used? Also, when it comes to our African American students, again, I am here as the representative of Apple. We are a resource, and we very rarely get support. There's different things that go on that are for African American students. There's no money that's put behind it. So we have all these great ideas, we have all these great events and all these great resources, and there's no kids there or parents to be a part of it. So are we going to stop and talk to our students and say, hey, make sure you go to so-and-so tonight, or hey, this is going on, are you gonna be there? I was just there for the preparing for college night. One lot of Black families in that room. We have things that are going on here that already has backing, that has just fallen by the wayside. We could provide AXO. We don't have a sponsor for that program. It was thriving for 30 years. We were winning competitions, but now we haven't had a sponsor since 2012. We could develop a all-Black ensemble theater. For a few years, we had African American students that were complaining that they were never getting lead roles in our theater group, which is held at a really high caliber. We could also have a Black History Month committee. We could sponsor African American children to travel abroad. I still have to dig for that information. We recently had a Japanese calligraphy person come. I did not see any African American students there watching the beautiful work she was doing, and I know we have students who are interested in anime, African American students. Lastly, Snowball is coming up. It's had hardly any participants. I don't understand why, if not at all, we're not encouraging more students to participate in Snowball. It's all about relationship building, self-respect, and leadership. It's $100 or $150. I would charge us to ensure that we double that number. The buses used to fill this whole block, one bus. So, lastly, I will say this. I'm 100% sure that those infractions do not include our football team, our students that are in band, and also for historical sake, we had Parent University. I attended. We would learn Microsoft Office. We would they would have job fairs here, and we just recently had our parent coordinator position changed to community outreach coordinator, and he is doing the work. Ty Garland is doing the work. Our tutoring center is now open later. Are we telling our students to go? Are we saying, hey, I saw something, I haven't seen it. And I post about it. And so again, we do have things that are going on, and if we're gonna talk about it, we can be about it.
But this is Avery, that's my bad.
You weren't here for that, David, but if you want to add anything, saying that you're a student, feel free to. Anything about that.
I was looking at the board or whatever. It's very interesting, but yeah.
feel free to come back in. Okay, so thank you all so much. The thing I wanted to point out was, I've been on this committee, I think it's been about 6 years now I've been involved. And this last year has really been where we've seen the work that we were aspiring towards for so long, really start to be fulfilled. And to hear it from the students and the teachers tonight is like, yes, and the staff. So I just want to thank you all so much. It's, we're still in process, right? We're still doing it. It's gonna continue. Right? It requires our whole community, but I really wanted to, Jacob, you said something about Facebook and parents. And because this is a public forum, I just want to say it again, that, our children are modeling what we're doing. And if we have forums where we are behaving in ways that are causing damage to other adults, the expectation that we're not going to see that in school. I mean, really, like, so let us be a community like we have aspired to be. So thank you all so much for going 20 minutes over tonight, and also thank you for this fabulous forum that we have, and yes, so wonderful. Lisa, did you want to add anything? I would welcome a motion to adjourn tonight.
Second.
Thank you so much. And, I close circle on specifically, we just need to say thank you to each other. Okay, so just look around. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you.